and I shall hand over to you, Jo.
Right, okay, folks. Can you wave at me that you can hear me and see me and everything is fine? Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for Sarah for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure. So this evening's lecture about the cats was really part of a larger series of lectures that I delivered about the ancient Egyptians' interaction with animals. But tonight we're going to focus particularly on the association with women. Now, this all came about when we were in darkest lockdown, and I'd be on Zoom teaching and people's cats and dogs would wander into the screen. There was even one day when somebody joined my Zoom from a stable and we said hello to their horse, and there was a tortoise in a high visibility jacket, which I will never forget. So what I wanted to do in these lectures was really look at the ancient Egyptian, how they interact with animals, not purely how they worship them. So we will begin looking at the species, but we're not going to get too tied up on the species because the ancient Egyptians didn't. We will look at the early evidence for the Egyptians' interaction with cats. We will focus principally on the domestic realm, and then we will move on to the divine realm. We will contemplate Hathor and Bastet, and we will look at cat mummies as gifts. We will end briefly looking at cats' role in the netherworld, because that is not necessarily particular to women. But I really want us to think about why the Egyptians worship the cats. What are the qualities that the Egyptians believe the cat to have? I want to start with this beautiful faience ring where we can see a cat and its kittens in the Metropolitan. And if you read on the Met's online catalogue, it talks about how this might be a representation of the distant goddess. And this it is a feline, generally a feline goddess who has become angry with her father Ra, and has retreated to Nubia and has to be cajoled back because Ra is missing her protection. But really I want to think about why are cats and felines given this reverence. If we think cats are hunters of vermin, fundamentally we can think of them as pest control, and the Egyptians really seem to take that importance in daily life, and then also in the divine realm. So I'd like us to think how and why the Egyptians worship the cat. If we're thinking about species, we can think that there's two, maybe three types of cat which were probably represented in Egyptian art. It is quite difficult from the physical remains, which are often very small, and the bodies and the mummies are broken, so to speak, and mixed with reeds and other items. So it is quite difficult to identify them from their physical remains. But we can see here we have this beautiful swamp or jungle cat. And the key feature to think about this feline is that it is this sandy brown colour. We don't have any spots or stripes. As I said, the Egyptians don't differentiate in species, and they also don't differentiate between wild or domestic cats. And it is, of course, very likely that there is a great deal of crossover with semi-feral cats. So is this a representation of a swamp cat here? This is a beautiful image from Carter. We are, of course, in the papyrus marshes here. Malik, who has written an excellent book about cats, he believes that, yes, this is the swamp cat, because it isn't associated with a tomb owner. But of course, the fishing and the fowling scenes, these swamp scenes, these papyrus marshes scenes, are very much about the Egyptians' control over nature. So we might be unsure of the particular species, but this concept of cat in the papyrus marshes is something that we will meet again. This, of course, is a Middle Kingdom scene, but we see that this as one of the principal tomb scenes where the cat appears in the New Kingdom. Many of the cats depicted in ancient Egypt are very probably what we refer to as the African wild cat. And these are really the ancestors of the domestic cat. In terms of our identification, the thing for us to think about here is, of course, that we have stripes, and this is quite a distinctive feature. They are also lighter and have longer legs than modern cats. You can see this beautiful image from the tomb of Nakdamun. Is this one of our African wild cats with our beautiful with our beautiful stripes here? This is a fantastic image. We have the name of the word the Egyptians use for cat. We can see here this me. Here it's written with the determinative of the cowhide. Sometimes it is written with the cat determinative, and we have the feminine of it here. Of course, the me, it is really suggested that this is onomatopoeic. It is the noise that the cat makes, so it's the meow sound of the cat. But what is fantastic, we will think about this image again, but we see that this feature, we see the cat here, and it is attacking a serpent, and that it is really, as I said, that the concept of the cat as a pest control. These African wild cats are also more active at night and did indeed hunt rodents and serpents. But of course, in our beautiful tomb, we have the text which is telling us that we've got the great cat who appears in the image of Ra. So we can see that the cat is being associated with the great sun god. And of course, we can think that the cat here is defeating Apophis. Every night, Apophis attacks the sun god's bark, and every night he is defeated. So we can see quite clearly the role that the cat plays in this. We also have limited possible evidence of the Saval cat, and here we can see we have spots as opposed to stripes. These cats may have come into Egypt from Nubia, and they may have been seen to be creatures of luxury because, of course, of their import. But if we start to look at some of our early evidence the cat in ancient Egypt. Rennie Friedman and her team at Hierakonpolis have found a skeleton of a cat in what they call the elite cemetery, because it has many elaborate burials which have upper wooden superstructures, and a whole variety of animals are interred in this cemetery along with humans. But what is particularly interesting about this interment is that the cat has a fracture which has healed, which suggests that the cat was kept in captivity for a number of weeks. And in the same tomb, there was found 7 baboons and a young hippo. These are all creatures which we can think of very much as status symbols, and perhaps we can think about the qualities that these animals may have thought to hold, which would be beneficial for your afterlife. The interment is dated on the basis of associated pottery. So is this really early evidence of cat and the taming of cats? It's generally previously been assumed that the cat was domesticated in about the Middle Kingdom, so about 2000 BC. So this would of course bring things much earlier. So this is the elite cemetery, and this is our tomb 12, where we have just looked where the body of the cat was interred. There is some disagreement whether this is a jungle cat or the African wild cat. I think scholars now tend to believe it's the jungle cat. But we do have another burial of cats in this cemetery, and it is down here in feature E. And this is particularly important because we can see we've got this large and elaborate cemetery. These are the large wooden superstructures that I talked about. But on the edge of the cemetery here, we find this fascinating pit. And this contained 6 cats, 2 adults and 4 kittens. They've been aged by their teeth and their bones. It's believed that they are African wild cats because they have long bones. But the age of the cats suggests that the female is not the mother of the kittens. It's likely that this was 4 captures, male, female, and then 2 pairs of kittens. Scholars have suggested that the teeth do indicate that these were domestic cats, and also the measurements. Domestic cats tend to be smaller. The kittens, it's been estimated that they are about 4 to 5 months. The female is about a year, and the male is about a year. So these cats have been captured, and then there is no obvious pathology, so it is suggested that they may have been intentionally killed, so that they have been sacrificed, so to speak. We can think that this might be so that they would provide some degree of protection in the afterlife. What is interesting is the placement here, because they are on the border of the cemetery, and dogs in a number of pre-dynastic burials. They are also found buried on the borders and the edges. And the suggestion with the dog is that they were guardians of the necropolis. They're found at Mardi and Badari. But where the cats interred here, because of their association of pest control, so that as they maintain a clean and a safe domestic environment, would they extend that to the afterlife? It is possible that this is one of, if not the first pictorial image of a domesticated cat. So we're back at Beni Hassan, and we can see the cat here. We have a female cat, and it is confronting a field rat. We have a gentleman here with a large stick. Is he the trainer, so to speak? Is this cat keeping vermin at bay in this scene? In early dynastic shrines, small faience figures of cats have been found. By the time we get to the Middle Kingdom, these faience figures move into the funerary realm. So these cats, these little models, are taken into your burial with you. So we can think that they are taken because they are going to extend some degree of protection. We might be able to view the ivory wands to help us perhaps understand some degrees of the protection. These ivory wands, these are Middle Kingdom, and when they have context, that they are found in tombs, but it is very likely that they were used in daily life to provide a safe space and protection for women and children. A limited number of them do have text, and they tell us quite clearly what their function is. Protection in day and protection by night, and they name the mother and the child. So these are really protective ritual instruments. They may have been used to draw a safe space on the floor. Some of them show signs of wear. Being made of ivory, we can think that the ancient Egyptians wished to tap in to the power of the hippopotamus. The hippo would, of course, been one of the most dangerous creatures that the Egyptians would encounter. But if we look at this example, the detail here, we can see we have a number of feline deities. We have our lion, our panther, and indeed a beautiful image of a cat here. These the creatures depicted, sometimes we have an early representation of Bes. We can think about these very much as deities who protect the home, but also these deities are associated with protecting the sun god as he travels through his 12 hours of the night. This is quite an unusual example with these number of feline deities. The text, that there are a number of texts which leave us within no doubt of the Egyptians' association with cats as vermin control. The Ride Mathematical Papyri is really a mathematical textbook. It's the sort of thing that would have given me nightmares as a school child. There's all manner of problems, and you have to use fractions, division, areas, volume. But one of the problems talks about 7 houses, 49 cats, and 343 mice. So it's quite clear in the Egyptian mindset that they are associating cats with settlements and mice. Similarly, in the papyrus Ebers, which is what we can think of as a magical medical text, and in the sense that it contains prescriptions for use, tells you to do something and to say something, very often apply something and say something. But here we are told quite clearly to prevent mice from coming near things, put cat grease on everything. So what we might think is that in settlements, cats may have found their way to granaries, to silos, because of course this is where rodents will have been. The cats will then have seen this as a wonderful source of food. It is quite possible that the residents, the human residents, will have noticed this and may have encouraged the cats by giving them some food to indeed act as pest control. So this would have been a mutually beneficial relationship, and this is no doubt how we have this strong affinity with cats and pest control. And the wonderful dream manual, which I'm sure Sarah's very familiar with from Deir el-Medina, this describes 226 dreams, and they are all evaluated whether they are good or bad. Sadly, at this point in time, they are all dreams of men. If a man sees himself in a dream, we don't have evaluation of female dreams till much later in ancient Egypt. But we do have, if a man sees himself in a dream, seeing a large cat, good, it means a large harvest will come to him. So clearly, right. Okay, folks, we'll carry on. I don't know what that was, but it's very unpleasant. Right. So here we go. Yes, our dreams manual. So clearly cats were associated with protecting the harvest. So cats would very much be creatures that would indeed be welcomed into your home. The dream manual is incredibly useful, not just for the interpretation of dreams, but because it uses familiar references. It's very much like humour. It is relative to the community in which it was created, so it has to use references which are well known. So if we think about the images in which we see the cat, the New Kingdom tombs are in that the cat is quite prosperous in here. For those dog lovers amongst us, I do have to say that the Old Kingdom tombs have images of dogs. So we have earlier evidence of the Egyptians having dogs as pets represented in tombs, but we still see great significance in the cat material. There are two types of scenes at the papyrus marshes and the cat under the chair. There's about half a dozen papyrus marshes scenes where we see the cat depicted. We have to remember the images in their totality, these papyrus marshes scenes are about fecundity. They're about fertility in the widest sense. We have this marsh here, and it is full of wildlife. We have the tilapia fish, symbols of rebirth, and we have the couple dressed in their festival best with their children. This is not necessarily a realistic representation of fishing and fowling. It has many layers, of symbolism. But the cat it is quite often depicted in these scenes. It is possible that the cat is used to flush out birds in their hiding places. So we can think that the cat has the cat been trained to do this? If we look at our wonderful image of Mena, he's holding his decoy birds here. So he's trying to blend in. He's got his throwing stick. There are already some throwing sticks in the air. So he is trying to bring down these birds. Interestingly, the ivory wands that we have just looked at, they were very probably based on wooden throwing sticks from an earlier time period. So we can really see that the concept of the wand about this control over nature. So we might send our cat in to flush out the birds, and we see that this beautiful representation of a cat here. It's interesting, the cat is standing on papyrus umbels. I'm not sure that would necessarily be practical for the cat. We can see it is trying to attack the nests. The birds, of course, once they saw the cat, would fly to their nests to try and protect their young. But the papyrus marshes is interesting if we think that the papyrus is very much sacred to Hathor. We have from the 4th dynasty, we have the images of shaking and rattling the papyrus for Hathor. So this, in essence, it is a Hathoric environment. Our other type of scene, as I said, is the cat under the chair. And there's about 20 of these scenes. They are predominantly Theban. There is only one image of the cat under the chair in a tomb outside of Thebes. That is in Saqqara. The cat is principally under the female's chair, the tomb owner's wife. And this is a beautiful image of Apuki. We have to again remember the significance of the image in its totality. Apuki and his wife are having offerings made to him. This festival bouquet may very well have been offered as part of a festival at a temple, and it is now being offered to the tomb owner. We see a cat and a kitten, so we've got the whole cycle of birth and renewal depicted here. The cat, we can see, it is without a doubt domesticated. It is wearing a collar and it's wearing an earring. Also, it is depicted frontally. It is the only image in this scene that we have a frontal representation. Frontality is associated also with the goddess Hathor. If we think of the Hathoric masks that we see, sistrums that we see, it is also associated with Bes. It is not exclusively Hathoric, but we are trying to understand and pull out the possible Egyptian associations here. In this beautiful scene from the tomb of May, we do indeed see the cat leashed. They're mainly unleashed, but we can see almost the payoff here. The cat is leashed, but we've got the bowl of food. So that we have the good things about domestication and the bad also. We see similar representations in a semi-royal representation. This is the tomb of Ammon, who is the brother of Queen T. And indeed, here is Queen T and Amenhotep III. And we can see under her chair, we have have a damaged but really still quite beautiful representation of a cat. The cat appears to be embracing a goose. The goose might be a goose of Ammon. The cat here might be representing the goddess Mut, who sometimes does appear with lioness features. It is quite interesting now that we have the cat, and then if we look underneath on the plinth of the thrones, we have the bound foreigners. So is the cat here in its concept also of pest control? It is in essence controlling Egypt's borders here. So we see these two types of scene. I'm going to turn my phone off because those beepings are getting on my nerves. There we go. Those two types of scene where we commonly see the cat, papyrus marshes and under the chair, are brought together wonderfully on this chair of the princess Sitamon. Sitamon is, of course, the daughter of Amenhotep III, who does indeed go on to be great royal wife herself. And this beautiful gilded chair she gifts to her grandmother, Tuya. It is found in the tomb of Tuya and Yuya. But if we just have a look here, this is an absolutely fascinating image. We can see Queen T is indeed enthroned and on a beautiful papyrus skiff. We're back in the papyrus marshes. And here Sitamon is making an offering to her mother. It is fascinating if we think this was then gifted to the grandmother of Sitamon. So we can see these really strong female links. Was this gifted to aid the afterlife of Tuya? It is a fantastic bringing together of these two types of image. We also see the cat on figured ostraca. Figured ostraca are predominantly, they're not exclusively, found at Deir el-Medina. And the scenes of animal parody are some of the most lively representations that have survived from Egyptian art. In the scenes of animal parody, we have animals carrying out the activities of humans. As we would expect, cats figure heavily. Does this suggest that they were very much part of the household? So this is why that they figure in these images. And they are very often with mice. And we have this role reversal. We've talked about the cat is really this creature of pest control, which is welcomed into the household and then becomes a pet. Unlike the dog, there are very few references to the cat being named, but clearly that the cat was very much part of the New Kingdom household. It would be an Elise household in the sense that for a pet, just the same as today, you need to be able to feed the cat and indeed provide some degree of care. These figured ostraca, we have role reversal. The mouse is taking the position here of a pampered noble, and the cat is acting as a servant. We've got this beautiful cooked goose. Although the scene is entertaining, it is likely that it is a parody of ancestor worship. We see these type of images again, predominantly, but not exclusively, at Deir el-Medina. And this is an Ankh-Ika and Ra, an able or an effective spirit of Ra. It is an ancestor who is worshipped. You would make a libation and offer some food in front of the stele. And these type of images are no doubt mimicking that. The figured ostraca, the cats also and mice also appear in judgment scenes. We always have three protagonists here: cat, the mouse, and the child. The mouse is always the judge. So the cat and the child take turns in being the person who is having the sentence cast upon them. We also see the cat and mice theme in the so-called Turin erotic papyri. This is obviously a reconstruction of part of that. The papyri was likely to have originated in Deir el-Medina also. It has 12 scenes of a sexual nature, which make up 2/3 of the papyrus. The other third has scenes of animal parody. It's likely that we should view the entire papyrus as a parody, but we see that the cat and mouse battle here. It has been suggested that there may have been a lost myth cycle, lost stories that indeed accompany these scenes of animal parody, particularly with the ostraca. These are shards of limestone about the size of my hand. These were drawn by the workers for their own purposes, and you can imagine that they could be passed around while indeed stories were told. But we also see the cat involved in the so-called herder scenes, and we can here see the cat taking this role as control over nature, ensuring order. Here we have similar images in tombs where humans carry out the herding, but here, of course, we have the basket with the eggs. Is this linking back to the images that we saw in the marshes, where the cat was trying to get to the birds eggs? So we will see later that in the Greco-Roman periods, thousands of cat mummies were left as gifts to the gods. It is quite rare for animal pets to have been mummified. But here we have a sarcophagus which does seem to have been created for a pet. It is in fact the sarcophagus that it belonged to, or was commissioned by, rather, Crown Prince Jehotimos, who was the Crown Prince of Amenhotep III. So he should have ruled, but clearly died, and then Amenhotep IV, who becomes Akhenaten, rules. Just so we can place them in context. But we can see that this fantastic sarcophagus was indeed created, and the cat is named. As I said, it's quite unusual for the cat to be named. So this is a pet. She has her own table of offerings. She is wearing a menet necklace. We can think about this as a counterpose. There are Isis and Nephthys and the goddess Nut and the 4 sons of Horus, all offer protection for her. And she is indeed referred to as true of voice, and she shall not be weary. So this suggests that it is imagined that she will have an afterlife. It is quite a phenomenal sarcophagus, and we can see behind her we have a mummy form figure with the head of a cat. So does this suggest that in the New Kingdom, cat mummies were created, perhaps only for a very limited number for pets? This is the only firm evidence that I know of, and obviously it's in the royal zone. So we're going to think about the association of the cat and the divine now, and how the ancient Egyptians link the cat to gods. At Sekhmet al-Kadium, which is a temple in the Sinai, which was created by miners from the Middle Kingdom and expanded in the New Kingdom. The temple is phenomenal because it is a mixture of royal and non-royal, and it is predominantly created by the men who have gone to mine turquoise. When Petrie excavated the temple, in the sanctuary, he found a layer of 2 to 3 inches of broken faience objects. Most of the votive offerings there were faience. The temple is very much sacred to Hathor. She is referred to as mistress of Neftkat. Neftkat can mean turquoise, either the stone or the colour. And one type of object which is unique to Sekhmet al-Kadium are these plaques with representations of cats. We can see this example here has the cartouche of Tutmosis III. There is an inscription which also refers to Hatshepsut, beloved of Hathor, lady of Neftkat. So was Hathor worshipped here in cat form? They are fascinating, these. We can see the cat here has a collar, which suggests there is some degree of domestication. Were cats at this temple, were they sacred to Hathor? Were cats kept here, which were sacred to the goddess? Was she worshipped in cat form? It is unlikely that there was large groups of cats in a desert temple. A number of these plaques actually show the cat on a plinth. Is this suggesting what we are actually seeing is a statue? Where statues of cats worshipped at Sekhmet al-Kadium. A small number of the cats actually appear on serics. Serics, of course, were used to write the royal name before the cartouche. The only other scholar who has noted finding these faience plaques is Rothenberg when he was working at Timna, which was also in the Sinai. And he discusses briefly the cat plaques, but he doesn't publish any. So our only real evidence is from Sekhmet al-Kadium, the site very much sacred to Hathor. We see this fragment of a bowl from Amarna with the fantastic representation of a Hathoric head and indeed a cat. This is an amazing piece. It was inscribed by Queen T for Amenhotep III and found at Amarna, no doubt part of a drinking vessel. We know that Queen T does reside in Amarna during the later years of her life. Did she take this vessel with her? So we're thinking about the association of cats and goddesses and still the domestic realm. This is actually a mirror handle in wood. It is a beautiful image of a New New Kingdom female figure, and she is holding a cat in her hand. These caryatid mirrors we see principally in the New Kingdom in the 18th dynasty. What we have to think about is that the mirror itself is an emblem of rebirth. It is associated in the New Kingdom with women. It is often depicted under the chair of married women in tombs. Hathor is often referred to as the Golden One, and this very well might be a reference to the mirror, as many mirrors have Hathoric faces. This is another beautiful caryatid, where we see a figure which does seem to have Nubian features. This was found down in Buhen Temple. So this was left as a votive offering in a temple. We do see Bess inscribed on the young girl's thighs here. But as I said, the mirrors themselves are we can almost think of them as Hathoric instruments. When they are found in burials, that they are often placed on the chest of the deceased in between mummy wrappings. We cannot always determine which deity the cat is representing. This beautiful stele from Deir al-Medina, we know the dedicatee. She is indeed known to us from the site, and she is a professional mourner. She appears in other people's tombs and has a number of stele. So she has done very well out of her career as a professional mourner. And we have this beautiful mirror representation of two cats. Now, Briere, who excavated Deir al-Medina for 28 seasons, he believed that the meowing cats might have actually been echoing the noise that grieving women made, and that's why they might have been included here. Moreover, in this instance, they might represent Isis and Nepsis, who are sometimes represented as two kites, and of course are very much associated with funerary rituals. So we're going to move on now and look at how Bastet, who is the most famous of the cat goddesses, how she is represented. But hopefully by looking at the domestic realm first, we can think about why the Egyptians hold the cat in such reverence. So one of our first references to Bastet is on a shard of pottery found under Djoser's step pyramid. It's been dated to the 2nd dynasty. So we can see that Bastet was a goddess who was revered from the earliest time period. She does appear briefly in the pyramid text and is indeed referred to as the mother of the king. And if we look at the writing of her name, we see an ointment jar. So it is likely that she has this concept of protection associated with her. She is depicted on the inscription with a human head and the face of a lion. She is principally associated with Bubastis, and there is evidence of worship at the site from the 5th dynasty, but we have huge amounts of evidence from later time periods. I couldn't resist including this little pharaoh who is relatively little known, 22nd second dynasty pharaoh, whose name actually means the tomcat, or he of the cat. So we can see how important the cat is. There is, from the earliest time periods, from about, I think it's about the 5th dynasty, there is a lintel found at Bubastis, where we see Hathor and Bastet both flank the king. So we do see both goddesses revered at the site, and we see links between them. There was found 1906 what is referred to as the Tel Bassa hoard. This is a huge amount of metal vessels, which was found when a new railway was being laid. As is common with these hoards, with these caches, these were buried for safekeeping. And this beautiful vessel here, we can see we have this fantastic representation of Bastet, and the text tells us that we have an offering that the king gives to Bastet, that she may give life, prosperity and health to Merit Petar. Vessels such as this will have been used for mixing wine. This, of course, would have been a highly expensive and elite ritual instrument, no doubt used in the temple. We see Merit Petar here shaking her sistra, so we can think about the use of this very much as a ritual vessel. From the same hoard, we have this beautiful, sadly fragmentary. All we have is the rim of the vessel, and we can see here that the frontal Hathoric face, and it is framed by lion cubs. We obviously have to remember our myth of the destruction of mankind, where Ra is aged, and he is displeased with the behaviour of humans. So he sends his daughter, generally referred to as Hathor. But as ever, there are various tellings of myth, but Hathor, and she goes on a killing spree. And the only way that he can bring her back from this killing spree is to flood the earth with red wine. And she believes it's blood. So she drinks it and she passes out. So we have a strong association with Hathor and inebriation. And of course, we have the festival of drunkenness at the temple of Mut. And we have already said Mut sometimes appears lion-headed. This fantastic capital from Bubastis shows that Hathor was clearly very strongly revered at the site. The capitals had references to both the white and the red crown, depending on their placement in the site. But this is how we generally see Bastet in later time periods. She becomes cat-headed as opposed to lion-headed. It is quite interesting because that is predominantly the form that she takes. If we think about Hathor, Hathor can take a bovine form. She can take the form of a serpent, if we think about her manifestation as Merit Saga. But Bastet is very much associated early with lion-headed place, and then a cat phenomenon later. She's sometimes called housewife Bastet in these representations, but we see her clear links to other deities. She is shaking a sistrum, which is very much a Hathoric instrument. I talked about the shaking or the pulling of the papyri for Hathor from the 4th dynasty. We can think about the sistrum as mimicking the noise of shaking the papyri. So this is very much a Hathoric instrument. And here she has an aegis, which is a piece of jewelry, and it is a broad collar necklace, and it is lion headed, and it is very, very often Sekhmet. She has kittens at her feet, emphasizing her fertility and perhaps her protective nature. The dress has almost a herringbone pattern, and it is suggested that the dress might be mimicking the fur of the cat. We might think that Bastet is taking on more of the peaceful traits of the lioness goddesses. We do often also see it with what we might think of as a handbag. She is one of the goddesses who has most accessories, as she is repeatedly depicted with her sistrum, her aegis, often kittens at her feet, and indeed a bag. This is a Roman representation of her. This was completely gilded, and her robe actually forms the knot of Isis. So we can see all of these later period representations of Bastet do indeed have links to other deities. These type of statues, these type of bronzes, may have been left in temples, or they could have been left in catacombs. This is the other manifestation of her with her kittens. We see a very strong association with fertility. We do have zoomorphic, purely zoomorphic representations of Bastet. This is a fantastic piece because, of course, the plinth that she sits on is taking the shape of a menet necklace, which, along with the sistrum, is very much an Hathoric instrument. Small statues such as this will have been left in temples, or again placed in catacombs. We can see the cat is no ordinary cat. It's wearing a broad collar necklace. And we have to remember that statues of gods in temples every day were dressed with jewelry. Part of the morning ritual that they would have they would have their makeup applied and fresh clothes, linen and jewelry. So we are really very much seeing a divine cat here. Some larger statues of this type were also containers for cat mummies. This particular example also had a hole pierced in its ear for an earring, and again we can just make out it is wearing a wadjet symbol here, so an amulet of rebirth and renewal. So perhaps these cat mummy containers, perhaps these were left as tokens to the goddess to appease her. Perhaps that they were left to Sekhmet, who of course is the more boisterous of the lioness goddesses. But the cat mummies from the later time period, these are very different than the concept of mummifying a cat, as we saw with the crown prince's sarcophagus. Cat mummies in the later time periods are made in their thousands, and these are gifts to the gods. These were no doubt bought by pilgrims and interred in specially prepared catacombs. The common type of shape here, that this conical body, or sometimes called skittle mummies. There is in the first millennium BC, there is millions of these animal mummies created. The cat mummy, the body of the cat would be opened, the organs would be removed, and there would be some packing inserted, sand, mud, natron. The legs would be extended and slid along the body. Reeds might have been used to give support. This is this example here, just so we have one particular example to look at. And we can see we have the linen face created. These are quite elaborate examples, and these are definitely in the upper market and echelons of cat mummies. And these scholars think that these might have been seen as manifestations of the goddess. So there are large cat cemeteries throughout Egypt. They are the three principal ones. So there has been work being carried out at the Bubastion at Saqqara from the 80s right up until 2000. This is by the French team, and they have been looking at the New Kingdom tombs, which were reused for cat mummies. So New Kingdom tombs, such as the tomb of Mia, the nurse of Tutankhamun, they, at a later date, were filled with cat mummies. And many of the mummies take the more simple skittle shape, but a number of them are more an animal form. But the scholars from IFO, they found that while there were a significant number of cats, there were also what they called fake mummies. These are smaller, and a few simply had cat bones. But it's the concept that is important here. What is interesting is that when the bags, the packages, that the cat mummies have been investigated, most of these are young cats, and they show signs of violent death by fracturing of the conical and strangulation. So blows to the head, bones are dislodged. They estimated that 2 out of every 3 of the cats had a violent end. So these cats were no doubt kept near temple precincts, and then they were raised to create cat mummies for pilgrims to buy. And that is very different than mummifying a cat as a pet and expecting it to have an afterlife. These are gifts to the gods. So how are we doing for time? Right, we're doing okay. I'll just finish by looking at some concepts of the importance of the cat in the afterlife, which is not necessarily solely linked to women, but it does show us the importance of the cat. The litany of Ra is a recitation which is included in royal tombs. The speaker is the king, and he recites the name of the sun god in 75 different forms. It is about the synchronization of Ra and Osiris, which has to take place so that the sun god can be reborn each morning, and the king is also synchronized with the sun god. So two of those forms of the sun god are indeed cat form. So we can see the importance of a cat here. Beautiful image of a cat. And indeed, in a number of coffins, we do see that the cat appearing as one of the manifestations of Ra. We did look at this to begin with, where we contemplated the importance of the cat as the defeater of Apophis. And we see this is very much based on a recitation in the Book of the Dead. The tomb at Deir al-Medina is basing the image here and the same image in Amun-Nakht and on a chapter from the Book of the Dead. This in itself is also based on a coffin text. There is an earlier coffin text. But we have the great cat of Ra, who is, of course, defending the Ished tree, which is associated with Heliopolis, and the serpent. The serpent isn't actually named as Apophis at this point in time. We don't get the serpent named as Apophis until I think it's about the 21st dynasty. But this is based on the coffin text 335, and that is fantastic. It tells us who is the great tomcat. He is the god Ra himself. He was called Cat Me when Sa spoke of him because he was meowing during what he was doing, and that was how his name of cat came into being. So that's the basis of our coffin text, which then forms the development into the Book of the Dead. And in private books of the dead, we see this represented. The cat is defeating Apophis every night. We do also see the synchronization of Bastet with Sekhmet in the Book of the Dead. Hail to thee, Sekhmet, Bastet. The interesting thing here is that we've got this concept of her as the Eye of Ra, and that is the goddess who is associated in the destruction of mankind. And we also have reference to her as great of magic, great of Heka, in the bark of millions of years. So we can think that Sekhmet, Bastet, is being called upon to defend Ra in his bark. And we also have Mut in the horizon of the sky. So we have many references to these powerful deities who are indeed feline. So hopefully after our discussion of the cat in the domestic realm, we can see some of the reasons why the ancient Egyptians revered the cat in the divine realm.
That was absolutely marvelous, Jo. Thank you so much. Thoroughly enjoyed it. One question I wanted to ask, actually, Silk asked a question. What do you think is meant in the Ebers papyrus?
Yeah, cat grease.
That sounds quite horrifying.
It sounds horrible, doesn't it? I was pondering that. Our problem with Papyrus Ebers is the translations are not great to say the least. It was quite funny. I don't actually know what cat grease is, but I googled it before because I was pondering exactly the same thing. And there's actually some sort of something you can buy, some sort of chemical thing called cat grease, which is not what we're interested in or looking at all. It must be, sadly, some sort of ointment that's made from bits of the cat.
Yeah.
I know.
Of how you can buy lion poo in garden centres to deter other cats from using your garden as a toilet.
Yeah.
So I imagine, you know, short of smearing a living cat all over your house, it must be some sort of rendered cat fat. Ugh.
Yeah. I know the thought of it. It's quite disgusting.
I mean, it's adding weight to my Toxoplasma gondii argument.
But the texts are useful because the texts really make clear that the Egyptians associate the cat with pest control, and that's why it was so welcomed in the home. And then we see it, and in the later images in the Book of the Dead. Yeah.
One of the other questions I wanted to ask was with regards to leopards and the fact that priests are shown so often wearing leopard skin, in the symbolism of the leopard.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of, the leopard, no, I'm thinking of the panther now, sorry. No, I'm not sure.
I mean, it seems to almost hint at an almost like a pre-dynastic shamanic style of tribal clothing, where I guess, I mean, leopards, what are leopards associated with in ancient Egypt? Regeneration, strength and power. So maybe there's something of that, especially when it comes to funereal rites, that you're imbuing the deceased with these special powers.
Yeah.
Honestly, to that point, my research is parallel to Joanna's. I'm also doing work with felines and women, positions of power associated with sexuality, domestication, that kind of thing. I don't know that the Sem priest, who has, the hide and also, has the head attached, those heads, as famously known in the tomb of King Tutankhamun, has those characteristic teardrops that leopards have. It's cheetahs. And so I think this would indicate that there is more of a connection to sub-Saharan Africa, which goes back to the Old Kingdom. Hatshepsut famously went to the land of Punt, and in her temple, various animals are brought back from Punt, and cheetahs are one of them. So I would argue that it's cheetahs and not leopards.
Oh, how interesting! Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I've not really looked at the leopard, but I was, when you asked the question, I was then thinking about those beautiful two statues in Tutankhamun's tomb where he is on the panther. Is it a panther, Brian? I can't. Yeah, it is, and that is generally thought to be the triumph of light over darkness, but nobody really knows. I mean, that's just, but that is that they are stunning. That those two statues.
But in those, to your earlier point, as far as art history interpretation goes, it's not only the triumph of light over darkness, but also the power of humans over the natural world. The natural world, which they consider to be chaos. As in art history, if you are depicted beneath the feet of the ruler, then you are dominating those powers.
Yeah.
And so therefore you can control them. So the power of the panther, the leopard, it's not a cheetah. I'm very familiar with the objects. But if you have power over that, then you have control over that and can utilize that to your best defense.
I'd just like to say something about the cheetahs, because they were pets, whereas the leopard that the priests wore, I mean, it was the high priest that wore the leopard skin, and it was entirely a symbol of power.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, cheetahs were not symbols of power at all. They were, they were much treasured pets and also hunters.
Well, to this day, cheetahs can be trained as pets, but leopards cannot, because they do not only know.
Never change their spots, do they?
They haven't. Yes, they have not changed their spots. Thank you. That is very much the point. Yeah. And one thing, Joe, which I found interesting, especially when you pointed out the cats themselves and their different origins, all the way through, I was looking at each cat to see how it's depicted. Now, the first little blue one you brought up, the first finance one, it looked as though it had stripes on its paws, or legs rather, and dots on its back. But as we went through, some were obviously the grey cat, others were predicted with the spots, and others with stripes. So I was looking at every cat to find out which one was being.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, but the Egyptians don't differentiate. So I don't think we should spend too much. We shouldn't, be at pains to do that. But it is interesting because we can't see the beautiful representations of sometimes spots, as you said, sometimes stripes. But the Egyptians don't have different words for the different types of cat, and they don't differentiate between domestic and wild.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
One of the statue images of Bastet that you showed towards the end, Joe, I was wondering whether, it looks like she's holding a handbag.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's supposed to be the me symbol, the milk basket, do you think? So,
well,
an element of her name.
Some people suggested it was to carry the kittens, but you don't see the kittens in it, so I don't see why. I'm not really sure why it's to carry the kittens. Let's have a little look at one of them. Oh, God, let me.
There's the me hieroglyph. That's like a basket containing a milk jug, isn't it? And it has that look about it.
Yeah, there she is. Yeah.
I completely agree with Joe that, I don't think the bag was meant to carry the kittens. I mean, try putting a cat in a cat carrier.
It's not going to work, is it? It's not going to work.
Even if you're a kitten, it's not going to work.
But it is, when we look at the way she's represented, she has so many accessories repeatedly, which is quite interesting in comparison to other deities. And they're all linking her to other goddesses.
Right.
Well, it brings to my mind as well this association, because her name features the hieroglyph for milk basket as well, this association of milk as being like celestial nourishment, and I think that also echoes her being related to Hathor as well as the celestial cow.
I mean, and she is commonly depicted in these really quite charming small amulets with her kittens, so that this concept of nourishment is very much associated with her.
Right.
Angela just asked a question. What was Tutankhamun's cat called? And was it Tamut or Mew Mew?
Oh, Tutankhamun. No, it wasn't Tutankhamun. It was
someone else.
It was Tamut.
Tutmosis the Fourth.
Yeah. Tamut.
No, he would have been Tutmosis the Fifth had he lived.
But this is the only real proper name, so to speak. There's a couple of tombs which might call the cat the pleasant one or something like that. But it's not like the dogs. The dogs have proper names. The dogs are sometimes called Blackie and all sorts of things. The dogs are named. The cat isn't in the same way.
You know what Tamut means, Joe?
I don't know if it means anything.
Because I just
It means the female cat.
Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Ta is the feminine article. In this evolution of the Egyptian language, they're starting to write the definite article of male and female, and then mute, like Joanne said, mew is the word for cat, and so that feminine T at the very end. So literally, her name was the female cat.
Yeah. So there's no. That's what I'm saying. That it's not. It is quite different. After looking at the dogs, it is quite different the way that the cat. But dogs are very much associated with mercenaries and with hunting and with warfare. But they are named in a very different way, but they appear much earlier as well, because they are pets in the Old Kingdom, while we only really have evidence that we only have representation of the cat as a pet in the New Kingdom. That doesn't mean they weren't, but it just means we've got no images of them. And
Joe, I don't know, maybe you can, maybe we can chat some other time on.
Oh yeah, sure.
Whatever. I somehow remember, and I can't remember the source of the tomb or the resource at the moment, but I believe I remember a late period cat that was referred to as Sherit, which means the little one, which is kind of adorable.
Yeah.
But I'm still working on my own research with the divine feline, if you will.
Yeah.
Fine.
I loved, I've not seen that image from the erotic papyrus before, the battle of the cats and dogs. And it was funny because we were talking about Louis Wayne before we went online and outsider artists, and that Louis Wayne may have had Toxoplasma gondii because he was so into cats and started to draw these increasingly psychedelic cats. But that image really reminded me of Henry Darger and his Vivian Girls, that kind of long battle scene of like warring factors.
I mean, obviously that's a reconstruction of the papyri, which is very badly damaged.
Yeah.
But what's interesting with those and the figured ostraca is that the cat and the mouse, it's a common theme. So that is clearly how the Egyptians view the cat and the mouse. But it also does suggest that they were part of the everyday life, and you're going to make stories about what surrounds you.
It's like the kind of prototype of Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, the brilliant. So some of the ostraca is the animal parody. It is so lively. It is stunning imagery. You can feel the fair almost.
Oh, Angela says it's fun that in those cartoons the mouse.
Yeah, it is gorgeous, and if you can. What I like is which way are they? There he is. You can feel his kind of the mouse's bristles and the ribs of the cat here. But we have to remember that these are from Deir al-Medina, so these are drawn by the guys who are creating the royal tombs. So you're going to get some pretty good artists here. But yes, he's beautiful. So it's role reversal now. That the cat is wearing his beautiful kilt, sitting in front of his table with his duck, and the mouses, and the cat is fanning him.
And he's sniffing drugs.
But the cat is still given a cane, so he is still kind of acting like an official.
What's the mouse holding? Are they throwing sticks?
The mouse, he's holding a lotus, and then he's holding. You know how you see nobles in tombs holding a piece of linen?
Oh, okay.
He's holding a piece of linen, so he's mimicking very much a noble.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to type them in the chat box or ask them directly to Joe.
The only thing I noticed is Bastet is sometimes transcribed as Bastet and sometimes as Basset. Is it just a matter of translation?
Yeah, I mean, the ancient Egyptians often write words in slightly different ways, depending on the space and
And
Yes,
the time period.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just could be the way they refer to it as Bastet or Basset. Yes.
Yeah, to Derek's point, my experience in the United States, University of Memphis, University of Chicago, her name has always been transcribed as Bastet.
Yeah.
Or just simply Bast, because that final feminine T, gets a little bit tricky sometimes in transliteration. I was in 1997. I was on an excavation with the University of Pennsylvania, and we adopted a 6-week-old kitten. And as a household group, we named her Bastet. And literally at the end of the season, we drew straws to see who would take her. I won. And so she lived with me for 17 years. And
wow, that's fantastic.
Even to this day, my private email account, with family and friends, is Abu Bastet, because that's what the local Egyptians called me, which means father of Bastet.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that explanation. Nice. Now, you females, you see, you influence everything all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right then, folks. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. That was brilliant. And I'll send the recording of this out to everyone tomorrow morning as well. So if you did miss any of it, you can catch up on it. And I hope to see you at some of our future sessions as well.
Oh, yes.
Joe, you're back
Definitely.
on the 13th of November. Can you give us a little outline of what you're going to be talking about then?
Well, we're looking at the decorated body. So I want to look at jewellery that is particular to women. Now, it won't be only jewellery that is exclusively worn by women, but things like girdles. We only really get girdles worn by women by the time we've got to the Middle Kingdom. So I want to look at the female decorated body and focus on how it is decorated in a different manner than the male, so to speak. So think about why the body is decorated as it is.
Great.
So,
look forward to that one. And I shall see you all very soon. Thanks again for coming, and I hope you have sweet feline dreams.
yes, definitely. Right, thank you very much,
Sarah.
folks.
Thank
It was
you,
lovely as
Joe.
ever to see you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Sarah.
Learn and say
Bye-bye.
bye.
Have a lovely weekend.
And you.
Thank you.
Thanks.